Welcome, everyone. If you work in welding engineering, quality assurance, or inspection, then at some point in your career you are going to encounter a document called a Welding Procedure Specification, a WPS. And behind every WPS, there is a qualification process. That process, for steels and nickel alloys, is governed by the standard we are going to study together in this lecture series. BSN ISO 15614, Part 1, 2017 edition. Over 9 lectures we will break this standard down completely, clause by clause, table by table, so that by the end of this series, you will be able to read a WPQR, interpret a range of qualification, plan a welding procedure test, and identify when a retest is required. Whether you are sitting a professional exam, preparing a procedure test at your company, or simply trying to understand what your quality team is asking for, this series has you covered. In this first lecture we are going to set the stage. We will cover what this standard is, what it applies to, the 2 testing levels it introduces, and the key documents involved. Think of this as building the mental framework on which everything else will sit. If you already work with welding procedures, some of this will be familiar. But stay with us, because the 2-level system in the 2017 edition is something many experienced practitioners get wrong. This standard is published as BSN ISO 15614-1 in the United Kingdom, meaning it is simultaneously a British standard, a European standard, and an international standard. The 2017 edition supersedes the previous version, BSN ISO 15614-1 to 2004 plus A2 to 2012, which has been withdrawn. However, and this is important, qualifications made under previous editions remain valid. They do not need to be repeated simply because the standard has been updated. The standard applies to the arc and gas welding of steels in all product forms, and to the arc welding of nickel and nickel alloys in all product forms. Specifically, it covers the following processes, referenced by their ISO 4063 numbers. Process 111, manual metal arc welding, also known as MMA or stick welding with covered electrodes. Process 114, self-shielded tubular cord arc welding. Process 12, submerged arc welding, or SAW. Process 13, gas-shielded metal arc welding, which includes MIG and MAG welding. Process 14, gas-shielded arc welding with non-consumable electrode, that is TIG welding, also known as GTAW. Process 15, plasma arc welding. And Process 311, oxyacetylene welding. The standard also notes that its principles may be applied to other fusion welding processes, even if those processes are not explicitly listed. Furthermore, a former process number, for example if a process was renumbered in a revision of ISO 4063, does not require a new qualification test. Before we go any further, let us get 3 documents clearly defined in our minds, because they appear throughout this standard and throughout your working life in welding engineering. The first is the PWPS, the Preliminary Welding Procedure Specification. This is the document you write before you do any testing. It describes everything about how you intend to weld, the material, the process, the joint design, the heat input, the consumables, the preheat, everything. It is prepared in accordance with ISO 15609, Part 1 for arc welding or Part 2 for gas welding. The second is the welding procedure test itself, the practical work. You weld a test piece strictly in accordance with your PWPS. The test piece is then examined and tested to verify that the weld meets the required properties. The third document is the WPQR, the Welding Procedure Qualification Record. This is the formal record of what happened during the test, the actual welding parameters used, and the test results. If everything passes, the WPQR is signed by the examiner or examining body and becomes the evidence that qualifies your welding procedure. From the WPQR, you then produce a qualified WPS, your welding procedure specification, which is the document your welders use in production. The WPS is derived from the WPQR and must stay within the qualified ranges. This sequence is fundamental. PWPS leads to the test produces a WPQR, and the WPQR supports the WPS. Never confuse the PWPS with the final WPS. The standard is very clear about why all of this exists. Clause 1 states, the primary purpose of welding procedure qualification is to demonstrate that the joining process proposed for construction is capable of producing joints having the required mechanical properties for the intended application. That sentence is the heart of the whole standard. We are not qualifying the welder. That is covered by ISO 9606. We are not qualifying the equipment. We are qualifying the procedure, the combination of process, materials, joint design, parameters, and technique. If that procedure changes significantly, the qualification may no longer be valid. Now we come to the most important structural feature of the 2017 edition, and also the one that causes the most confusion, the two-level system. ISO 15614-1 to 2017 defines two distinct levels of welding procedure test, called Level 1 and Level 2. Level 1 is based on the requirements of ASME Section X, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers Boiler and Pressure Vessel Code. It has a less extensive testing program and wider ranges of qualification. It was introduced specifically to align with projects where ASME-based requirements apply. Level 2 is based on the previous version of this standard, the 2004 edition with its amendments. It has a more rigorous testing program and more restrictive ranges of qualification. Level 2 is the traditional European approach to welding procedure qualification. A procedure test carried out to Level 2 automatically qualifies for Level 1 requirements. But a Level 1 test does not qualify for Level 2. Think of Level 2 as the more demanding qualification. If you pass Level 2, you have automatically passed Level 1 as well. But if you only did a Level 1 test, you cannot use that to claim Level 2 compliance. And there is a default rule that every practitioner must know. When no level is specified in a contract or application standard, all the requirements of Level 2 apply. So if you are ever unsure which level applies, and nothing in your contract says, go to Level 2. The UK committee that voted on this standard specifically highlighted this as a risk area, noting that vigilance is required. The standard covers production welding, the welding you do to make a product. It also covers repair welding, when you need to restore or fix a damaged weld or component. And it covers build-up welding, where weld metal is added to restore dimensions on a worn or machined part. One important point regarding previous editions: qualifications made under earlier versions of this standard remain valid for any application where the current edition is specified. You do not need to requalify existing procedures. However, if you want to create a new WPQR range of qualification based on an existing qualified WPQR, for example to take advantage of updated qualification ranges, that is possible, provided the technical intent of the testing requirements has been satisfied. Let's recap in quickly. Lecture 1 Key Points. 1. ISO 15614-1 to 2017 specifies how welding procedures are qualified by welding procedure tests. 2. It applies to arc and gas welding of steels and arc welding of nickel and nickel alloys, processes 111, 114, 12, 13, 14, 15, 311. 3. 3 key documents: PWPS, before test, right pointing arrow WPQR, test record, right pointing arrow WPS, production use. 4. Primary purpose: to demonstrate the procedure produces joints with required mechanical properties. 5. Two levels exist: Level 1, ASME aligned, less extensive, and Level 2, European, more rigorous. 6. Level 2 automatically qualifies Level 1, but not vice versa. 7. When no level is specified, Level 2 requirements apply by default. 8. Previous edition qualifications remain valid, no need to retest. Now let's have 3 questions from the lecture 1 and I will wait for your comments below. I will try to reply to all. Question 1. What is the primary purpose of welding procedure qualification according to ISO 15614-1? Question 2. When no level is specified in a contract, which level of welding procedure test applies? Question 3. Which of the following statements about the two-level system is correct?